thought I'd make a video on the rail buggy today. It's been sitting in my trailer for a couple of years. It's too cold to go out driving around in the car, around the block or whatever. But yeah, stay tuned, and we're going to do a little bit of nitpicking and back engineering on this car. Hey, you're back in the garage with TheEZGZ, and we switched cars. Yeah, it's a snowy, cold day. It's down in the single digits, and I was lucky enough we had a nice day last week. This thing's been sitting in my trailer for 2.5 years, ever since this COVID thing started. And I know when I parked it, it had 3/4 of a tank of gas in it, and I went out there to try to fire it up. I checked the gas, there was nothing in it, and I thought, oh, this is going to be tough to get it in the garage. I'm going to have to clean the carburetors out. It's not going to run. What am I going to do? And this is the battery that was in it, and it just wouldn't crank it. And there was a few times over the last couple of years that I did want to just hear the sound of my engine and just listen to it and start it up and make sure that fuel was flowing. I thought about draining the fuel out of it, but these are really interesting small batteries. It's Odyssey, and it has 600 cold cranking amps, and it weighs nothing. They make lithium batteries now that are even lighter than this, and don't let these small battery terminals sway you. It gets the job done if your car is tuned up. If you've had a problem and you have to crank and crank and crank, of course, it's probably not going to have the full capacity. And I had it sitting down low. This was the original battery tray, and the battery terminals came out on the bottom on the side close to my starting motor, and the gas tank sat up a few inches higher. But I just didn't like that arrangement. I do like having the battery down there low. I like my weight and my center of gravity to be as low as possible all of the time. But in order to get this done, I took the battery out of one of my other cars. This is just a garden tractor battery, 340 cold cranking amps, and it worked just fine. Matter of fact, I've got a starter button right here. And this is a convenient thing to have on any car, so that you turn your ignition on and you come around back and you can see what's going on. Give the gas to your carburetors. That's 340 cold cranking amps on a 2276 with about 9.5 to 1 compression. So yeah, no problem. And you save yourself a bunch of weight. That's a $45 Walmart battery. So there you go. And that's just a temporary spot, although I'm thinking I've proved to myself what this car is about. I didn't set out to have a car like this. I made a trip to California to buy a car and trailer, and the deal went sour, so I figured as long as I was there, I'd look around and see what was available, and I came home with this. I just like the nostalgic look to it, and I've done some research on it. These side pods, you can see how thick they are, how much they stick out over the frame. That's a great place to put coats and tools and different parts, because you're really limited on storage space on these things. And if I put the expanded metal here across, I'm kind of goofing up my package tray. This originally had a fuel cell, and it had a little angle iron tray there with some bracing on it. So this may have been a real pre-runner or some kind of a class race car at one time. There was a firewall behind the seat. There was a hood that was on there, and a floor that closed up that front opening. And yeah, I've had a lot of fun with it. I've tried it in the sand, and it's too heavy to keep up with my friends' cars, and so that kind of makes it not so fun. A lot of times they'll let me lead, so I'm going as fast as I can with this car, but then they're bored to death behind you, you know. So, and it's really important to, if you get in with a group, if you all have similar cars, it makes it more of an even. That's why they have classes in races, right? It's not fair for this car to be out next to a side-by-side with a 200 horsepower Hayabusa motor on it, or to have a big V8. So you have the different classes, and it makes it a little more even, and kind of competitive, and you can play boy racer in it. And so that's always something to consider too. If you have a friend or somebody that has a car and you got interested in it, get a car similar to his. So I'm going to show you a picture here, right here. This is what started this madness for me. I worked in a 52-story building in downtown Denver, and we had a 12-man maintenance crew. And one of the younger guys on the crew was looking in the paper, and he saw this. It was a basket case. It was all in pieces, had a Type 4 motor, didn't run. He bought it from the mother of the kid that was trying to monkey with it. And I thought the guy was crazy. I says, "There's nothing there." I said, How you don't know enough about cars. There's brake systems, there's hydraulics, there's electrical. You're never going to get that thing running. And so I'd had shop class in school and worked on cars all my life. He ended up buying an engine that ran out of another car, and he put that in there, and the guy he bought the engine from was a Volkswagen guy. He told him how to wire it up, and he got this thing to start. I helped him put in the gas tank there, and he got it running. He painted it up and put it together, and he says, meet me at this field over by our town where we lived. And so I brought my son and my girlfriend over there, and we watched him drive around the field, and he let me try it. There was a creek there, and I got my girlfriend in the car, and we drive down by this little trail, went by the creek, and there was this black, muddy muck. And we came out of that creek bed, had to go through this big old puddle, and a big blob of that black, grimy muck landed right on her leg, and she just laughed. Now, anybody that's interested in these cars, rail buggies or Baja Bug, you got to get this book. This book has got so much cool detail. It shows you the right way and the wrong way, and this guy had both of these race cars and won races with him. He knows what he's talking about it. I got a book, this book, this is a newer one. The one I had was pretty well worn, and when my friend discovered that this wasn't the car that he wanted, and he had 4 kids, no place to put them, he said he sold it, and he gave me a copy of that book. So I started off when good information in there. That's all I can say. Really good information. And I noticed on the front of this car, see, it's got these kingpin mounting blocks, and it says Panzer on the front of them. And I recalled when I was looking in this book, this guy made mention of these Panzer blocks. And he says, Panzer torsion tube brackets were originally used to mount a front suspension assembly onto a tube frame buggy. Here, a wise Baja racer is using a pair of them to strengthen the torsion tubes. Okay? So, I makes me feel like this is a old race car that just kept getting banged up and repaired. So, it's got these combo spindles on the front, and here it is compared to a standard kingpin stock front spindle, and you can see, maybe you can see the difference in the size of the inside of these spindles. Sometimes you can hit something hard enough to actually bend these spindles on especially on that side, because it's hollow on the driver's side, and your speedometer cable hole goes all the way through the axle. And I think it mentions in the book to take a bolt and pound it in there and weld it to help give it the strength and make it more of a one piece. And they talk about these heavy-duty ones in there made by the Wright brothers, not the people that fly planes, but somebody put these on here at some point, and they're referred to nowadays as combo spindles. And what they are is it's a spindle from an International Harvester tractor. Something old, something very old, but nonetheless, it's heavy duty. You lose your Ackerman effect, but that's not too important in a dirt car, and it is completely interchangeable. When I got this car, I wanted to try it in the sand, and I knew this weight would have to go if I had any thoughts of pulling a wheelie. So I dropped this all off, and I put this in, and the standard link pins, these are the stock trailing arms. They didn't have to modify those, and that's where the link pin goes in. And what they use on this, and you see there's no nut on the outside. You can use the stock Volkswagen shims to correct your camber, your camber, and they have an extra lock nut. It's just a bolt that goes through there, and you still use your pinch screw, and you can take this off. And amazingly enough, this was completely wore out when I brought the car home. They had so much slap in them, it was crazy. And I took them apart. It looked, even though the grease zerk is right there, I don't think whoever installed this thing ever greased it. I think they were just rushing through it to minimum time charged to the customer, because the guy I bought the car from was like 70 years old and didn't work on it himself. And they probably expected that the owner would grease it himself. Nobody ever did. It was dry, and the dust and dirt got in there, and they were all wore out. Well, I thought, I didn't know these were International Harvester. I didn't know what they were. Where am I going to get new bushings? I had a bushing kit for a standard link pin, and lo and behold, I just pushed them in, and I didn't have to ream them out or do anything. The kingpin is the one that goes up and down lengthwise. The link pin are these ones that change the direction 90 degrees. But the trailing arms here are stock standard Volkswagen. And what they did is added a plate here to move the lower shock mount further down and give the shock more leverage. They also cut the center of the beam, which was common practice, and they rotate it to put more tension with the stock leaves. And you could actually, there's some half leaves and there's some full-size leaves. If you ever take one of these apart, you'll see what I mean. And you can get more tension for higher speed banging around. There's also a travel stop that would go on a stock beam and have a big rubber on it. Yours may be that way, and you can either cut it off, which a lot of guys do, but then your tie rod's going to be banging on your frame if you're using a stock steering setup like this one. This one was banging so much it just aggravated me because there's extra tension. A car like this, with the way an old man like me drives, a bone stock front end is just fine. If the stiffer you make it, the more everything is transferred to the frame flexing and the driver's flexing. The whole idea of having wheel movement and suspension is to absorb the energy of the irregular terrain that you're driving over and not kill the driver or break the buggy. It's got to finish the race. This is a stock steering damper. They left that, and on a car like this, when you're banging into things and you have a small steering wheel, you better not put your thumb or your fingers in any of those holes or be having your thumb on the inside unless you know that you're just on regular level ground and it's smooth and you're not going that fast. But if you're getting dicing it up, now a way to avoid having that tie rod hit, if you don't have class rules or something, there's plenty of rack and pinion setups available for any type of a car. They have clamps that will fit on aluminum beams, and you can bolt your rack to. You don't have to do any welding or any of that sort of stuff. You can pretty much buy that stuff from different suppliers. There's different types of racks. If you go with a center-mounted rack, then you have all this space on this side. I hope you can see. Not a very good angle, but there's plenty of space. There's several inches of space on this side. So by moving this over to the center, and there was a trick, I don't know if they talked about it in this book or not, where you can cut this and square it up and use the stock steering box closer to the center. Of course, these are in the way here, but you could probably mount it in this section right here if this wasn't welded there, and that would open up more room on this side to allow more shock wheel travel and allow the shock more time to absorb that energy. That's the whole thing about long travel, and it's just, if you just have a small space and you hit a bump and it tops out or bottoms out and transfers all that energy. So by having more distance and having a shock absorber, giving it more time, and they'll even have the heavier duty rods here, and a nice little trick that I like to do. This has a, I wouldn't really consider this a stop, and you never want to use your shock absorber for a travel stop. But what you can do is push this thing up and then drive across some rough terrain, and you can see just how much of the rod you're still not using. And in this case, you're hitting the frame, and what you would want to do is take off the top or the bottom and make sure that you have an extra inch or so of shock travel, just to make sure you're not using it for a stop. And you can see where these things have been welded and re-welded and bent, and that's because it wasn't engineered right. And there's no sense putting a long travel shock and a high tower if you're not going to use if you're not going to have it set up right. You can also take a nylon wire tie, and you can wrap it around that, snug it up, and you can put that up there, and then it'll, every time the shock comes, it'll push it down. The harder the bump, the farther down it'll go. And you might surprise yourself that you paid a lot of money and are not getting the full benefit of it. And in this case, that's exactly what happened. And you can also see that right here, this is supposed to be the bottom stop, and somebody added onto it. So it's in full droop, the tie rod's hitting the frame, so this is something that I want to address. And I have a feeling that the reason that happened, and the reason it is that way, is because along with having this International Harvester spindle steering setup, you're using the International Harvester tie rod end, which is much bigger than the Volkswagen, and a bigger aluminum tie rod, and then they use the standard Volkswagen one at the other end. And I put a sleeve over it because I got tired of listening to that knocking sound, and I cut some of this off, and this would have hit the shock. There's no way it could have, it was barely missing it, but I started moving things around here and jimmying with it, and then I gave it some clearance so that you don't dent your shock, because that'll destroy it. Yeah, so we're just kind of nitpicking here and explaining things and back engineering things to show you how this all works and what's going on here. So you can also get the kind of rack and pinion like a Pinto, where the actual column comes in on the driver's side over here instead of the center, and it can bolt to the floor, or you can, yeah, I think it bolts to the floor. I don't think it goes above, but you can, you know, people come up with whatever you can dream up. That's what you can do. So, yeah, I'm just kind of looking over my car here, picking out some things that I've got to do. With these combo spindles, you have to go with the heavy-duty combo hub adapter. You can get disc brakes for these setups. All this stuff is pricey, let me tell you. And, you know, I saw it when I was buying the car, and I knew enough about it that I thought, well, somebody spent some extra money on this, and, you know, I saw little spots, you know. I do not like a hydraulic pedal. There's just no feel. If you're in that rough, rocky stuff, it is so hard to keep from killing your engine. You just don't have the sensitivity and feel of the stock type cable setup. And especially if you put like a This has got a stage 1 Kennedy pressure plate in it. Stuck on the side of a hill. Say you do get up there and you stall it, and you're at an angle on the hill, and you don't want to roll back, and you're trying to, you don't want to just lurch forward. That's where I don't like this thing. It's just it's like you got a big sponge underneath your foot. It just, you can't feel it. I don't know. Maybe it's just me, you know, old age. You can see there's a play here. Those pins will oblong the hole on these steel legs. This is the return on the brake side, but it doesn't hurt in the off season to take this all apart, clean them out, put a little grease on them, and that way you won't have metal to metal that's just sawing itself up. And I have taken these things out on other cars that I've used these pedal assemblies for a long time, and the little stems here will get squished, and you know, you wouldn't want to break one of those. You could stuff just about anything in there, a nail, and get back to camp, you know, piece of barbed wire or something. But I always like to have my car in the best shape I can and get in and go over with it. So many guys that I used to run with, you go someplace far away for a week's vacation, and they didn't work on their buggy before they got there. And all of a sudden, oh, I need some brake fluid for my master cylinder. I need some, you know, something's the matter with this. I got to get a new fuel line. Have you got any of these size clamps in there? Have you got one of these kind of wrenches? And it's like, I'm not going to ride with that guy. Unless he just happens to be following along with the group. It's you do that stuff before you get out there on the trail, please, would you? Here's something else I want to address. This is threaded. It's got several holes here to change the travel on your gas pedal, your carbs. Now, having it in the bottom hole means you have to move the pedal farther to get the same reaction, okay? Because you're changing the geometry here. I want that pedal to move a lot with very little motion, because if you're going through the rough stuff and banging along the rocks, this thing will be jerking on that throttle linkage, and you already got floats that are jostling water down or gas down the carburetor, and you start hitting this, making the accelerator pump squirt. It is just harder on those tougher hills. This has got a spring return and a full throttle stop, so you're not bending the heck out of your carburetor linkage in the back of the car. And good setup. And I always put a heel stop across the bottom, so that for the same reason you can push against the heel, and then you're just using the ball of your foot on the pedal. If you have the flat of your foot and that's all that you got, every time you hit a big bump and the buggy jerks, your whole pedal's going to start jerking. So this is nice. You got the heel stop. You got someplace for the side of your shoe to fit, or your flip-flop, whatever you're wearing. And yeah, this is a real good ergonomic, comfortable setup for me, and you need to think about that. There's a piece of foam jammed underneath fiberglass wrapped around the pipe. That's right where your knee keeps banging. I'm not kidding you. If you don't have a place for your foot and your leg is just sitting there, by the end of the day, even if it's padded, my side of my leg will hurt. Or you'll get up the next day and wonder, what the heck, why does my foot hurt, you know? But those are the things that, you know, you come back home and you address them right when you come back home, and it's fresh in your mind. I changed the oil. I put clean oil so it's not sitting for 6 months with that old dirty oil in it. And I top off my fluids, see if I still have fluid in it, and if I don't, I know I better start looking for a wheel cylinder that's leaking or something else. Bleeding the air out of your lines. That's always a good one. And it's so easy to do on a car like this. With a hydraulic, you just take a bungee cord and tie it up here on your tie rod and on the end of your pedal, and that'll put just enough pressure where you can just take your time, walk around the back, and open it up and bleed out some air. Trying to explain to your girlfriend what you're doing and what she's supposed to do. Up, down, no, leave it down, up, and you're fumbling with the wrenches back there, and then it's like, I just do it with a bungee cord, guys. a lot more peace in the family. So anyhow, yeah, we're just having fun, going over a few things here and checking things, because it's been so long since I've driven the car. I was surprised. I put gas in it and it started up and idled. I was amazed. I couldn't believe it. It had been sitting in that trailer for a couple of years just roasting and baking, and all the gas was gone. And yeah, but we're going to look everything over and check it all out and make a few little detail changes here and there. And you know, I was actually thinking of getting rid of the car if it's sitting that long and I'm not using it, but the dog seems to have adapted to it quite nicely. I might put a padded board or something, take this hand rest off and put a padded board down here so that when she's sitting up, she's got some place to put her feet, and it would be padded. And I don't know, I took the shoulder straps off temporarily. I just stuffed those in the side down there on that pod, and I probably wouldn't have any of the belts for her. What I'm probably going to do, I'll probably get her a chest harness with a tie in the back, and then I'll come in from the seat rest here. Yeah, you been sleeping? Huh? Did I put you to sleep? All my babbling here? And I'll just measure it up so that she can't do a face plant into something on the front. And although these pipes here, you can see where they're structurally a great idea, but it makes it a super pain to get in and out. And that might be a good thing on this side. I thought about removing those, you know, and then it's like, well, if I'm going to take that off, I've got to trim this. And this is a plastic tractor light. What do you need this much steel to hold that on for? I have no idea what was going on here. There were some other brackets and things on the back. I think they carried one of those big, what is that, bumper jack that the off-roader guys use that can lift your car like 3 feet up in the air. I think there was a bracket for one of those or two of those on the back here, and it's just a massive amount of. I'll bet you there's just 100 pounds of braces and brackets and unnecessary tubing. You could. I don't think you need this one, and you surely wouldn't have needed to do it with 1.5 inches. And I wouldn't be surprised. This is a 120 gauge wall thickness, because that's what I think is a minimum requirement for the race cars. This is a setup I don't like. You got the clip-on seat belts. A seat belt. This is convenient because you can take them on and off. But you see how that works? You clip them, run them either over or through the hole, whatever feels most comfortable, and you clip them on these things. And these are supposed to be forged steel and come out the other side and have a nylock nut or something on them. These look pretty boogered up. I don't know why they look like that, but it rattles if you're not. A lot of times I don't wear my shoulder harnesses. Sometimes I don't even wear the seatbelt. If I'm just going on a lazy drive, you know, I don't want the. If you see a rough section and your seatbelts are loose or not on at all, you can lean forward, and it's like standing up on the foot pegs on a motorcycle. You can move your upper body around so that your back isn't taking all those shocks all the time, all day long. I'm telling you, after a week of buggying out on the sand dunes, I'm done. I'm happy as heck if I don't have to turn a wrench and the car drives me back into the trailer, but my body will be aching for a week after that, even when I was younger, and now it's even getting worse. So yeah, anything you can do to make it more comfortable and more ergonomics for you and your passenger, the more use you're going to get out of your car, plain and simple. Yeah. Okay, guys. I babbled enough. I hope you're having a great day. I hope it warms up out here. Spring is around the corner, and I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subbing. TheEZGZ out. Leave a comment down below.